welcome to the deep dive.
Mm.
You know how sometimes you read a really impactful book and wish you could just absorb the most important parts quickly?
Yeah, totally.
Well, that's pretty much what we do here. And today we're tackling a book that a lot of you have actually asked about, Liz Wiseman's Multipliers.
That's right. This one came highly recommended. So our mission today, it's pretty simple, really. We want to pull out the actionable gold from multipliers,
Yeah.
stuff you can actually use like right away to unlock more potential in yourself and, the people you work with and interact with.
Think of it like your cheat sheet, maybe.
Yeah.
A guide to getting the best out of each other.
Exactly. And the starting point, the observation Wiseman makes, it's quite profound, actually.
Yeah, what was that again?
She noticed that so many organizations, they're actually much smarter than they seem. Like the intelligence is there in the people.
But it's not getting used.
Precisely. It's
Yeah.
untapped potential. And from that idea, she developed this whole concept of multipliers. These are the leaders or people who amplify the intelligence and capabilities around them, and then their opposites, the diminishers.
Right, the diminishers.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who kind of shut that intelligence down, often without even meaning to.
Often without meaning to, yeah. That's a key point we'll come back to.
Now, this isn't just some abstract theory. Think about how much work has changed. It feels, well, chaotic sometimes.
Definitely. We've gone from predictable environments to what everyone calls the VUCA world: volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous.
Yeah, VUCA. You hear that acronym everywhere.
And in that kind of world, the old leadership style, the one person at the top who knows and tells everyone else what to do.
It just doesn't work anymore.
It really struggles. The complexity is too high. Things change too fast. You need the collective brain power.
So what's needed now are leaders who, how does Wiseman put it? They see, provoke, ask, and unleash.
Exactly. Leaders who draw out the capability that's already there in their teams.
Okay, so let's really dive into this multiplier effect. What's the fundamental impact? What do multipliers actually do?
Well, simply put, they just get way more out of people. Significantly more. The data she presents is, well, it's pretty stark.
Yeah, that statistic really jumped out at me too. Multipliers get nearly twice the capability for people compared to diminishers. Like 1.97 times, almost double.
Almost double, yeah. Just pause and think about that for a second. Imagine doubling the effective brain power and effort on your team.
The difference would be incredible. Productivity, innovation,
Yeah.
everything.
Huge difference. And the book uses some really vivid stories. Think about Vikram's experience working for George at Intel. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah. He said he felt like a smart SOB working for George.
Right. And not just him. The whole team felt smart, capable. And they got amazing results, especially when Intel was moving into microprocessors.
So what was George actually doing? Because it wasn't about him being the smartest guy in the room, was it?
Not at all. Or at least he didn't act like it. What's fascinating is he apparently spoke very little in meetings. Maybe only 10% of the time.
10%, wow.
Yeah. His skill was in what he called crisping up the problem, getting super clear on what they needed to solve. And this is crucial, he created the space for the team to figure it out.
That's so interesting. The leader talks less, but the team achieves more. And then you have the complete opposite with Vikram's other manager.
Exactly. The brilliant scientist guy, super smart himself, no doubt.
Well,
but people around him just shut down. This manager talked a lot more, like 30% of the time, but a lot of it was negative feedback, killing ideas almost before they were spoken.
Ouch. And the decisions were all top-down.
Totally. Made by him, maybe a couple of close advisors, and then just announced. People learned pretty fast that their input wasn't really wanted or wouldn't change anything.
So you see the direct contrast. One leader amplifies intelligence, gets engagement, innovation.
And the other, despite his own intelligence, diminishes it. Leads to people just checking out.
So this 2x multiplier effect, it's not about squeezing more hours. It's about unlocking that latent intelligence, that brain power.
Precisely. So just imagine in your own life, maybe at work, maybe even at home or in a community group, what if you could double the effective intelligence contributing to things?
Okay, so what's underneath these behaviors?
Right.
What are the core beliefs that separate multipliers and diminishers? Their mindsets, basically.
Yeah, the mindsets are fundamental. Wiseman says diminishers often operate from this belief that intelligence is kind of rare, it's scarce, an elite thing.
And they probably see themselves as one of the lucky few who have it.
Pretty much, yeah. So their leadership style reflects that scarcity view. They feel they need to be the smartest, have the answers, keep control.
Makes sense.
And multipliers.
They have the opposite view. They believe that most people are actually underutilized, that there's tons of capability just waiting to be tapped if you provide the right kind of leadership. It's an abundance mindset.
Scarcity versus abundance. That's a neat way to put it. And this is where that idea of the accidental diminisher becomes so, so important.
Right, tell us more about that, because that sounds like where a lot of us might actually fall, maybe.
I think so. These are the well-meaning people, good intentions, but they unknowingly do things that shut others down. Maybe they jump in too quickly to help, or they're overly optimistic, or they try to protect their team too much.
So it's not always the obvious bad boss. It could be someone trying to be helpful.
Exactly. And that's often the biggest opportunity for growth for many leaders, recognizing those accidental diminishing tendencies. It makes me pause and think, what might I be doing sometimes?
Yeah, definitely makes you reflect.
And Wiseman also stresses it's not just about changing your own behavior, though that's vital. It's also about changing the systems, the culture in an organization to really support and reward multiplying behaviors.
Okay, so that leads us nicely into the core framework. The 5 disciplines of a multiplier. Let's start with number 1, the talent magnet. What's that all about?
So talent magnets, they don't just see people as like resources to fill slots. They see them as sources of potential. Untapped genius, almost.
Okay.
Their focus is on unleashing that potential, growing people.
Yeah.
And because of that, they not only attract great talent, but they use it fully, and people's careers often accelerate when they work for a talent magnet. The book mentions Mitt Romney and how he helped develop Meg Whitman.
Right, and the opposite is the empire builder.
Yeah, the empire builder. They tend to kind of hoard talent. They might hire smart people, but then underutilize them, maybe to make themselves look good or control resources.
So they collect talent, but don't necessarily deploy it effectively.
Exactly. And this can lead to what Wiseman calls a cycle of decline.
How does that work?
Well, good people get frustrated because they're not being challenged or utilized. They disengage. Their skills might even atrophy.
They quit and stay.
That's the phrase, yeah. They're physically there, but mentally checked out. And that can be really corrosive for a team.
Definitely.
So talent magnets create the opposite, a cycle of attraction. Well, they're often very clear about the challenges and the opportunities. Think about that Shackleton recruitment ad for his Antarctic trip.
Oh yeah, the brutally honest one. Hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold.
Exactly. It didn't paint a rosy picture, but it attracted precisely the kind of people who would thrive in that specific tough environment. Talent magnets attract the right fit.
Got it. And there was that example from Hexel, the pharmaceutical company.
Yeah, the amoeba model. Really interesting. They didn't have rigid job descriptions, roles sort of formed around people's actual skills and interests. Very fluid.
That sounds really adaptive.
Yeah.
Okay, so for someone listening who wants to be more of a talent magnet, what are some practical steps?
A big one is become a genius watcher.
A genius watcher, what does that mean?
It means actively looking for what people around you do really well, almost effortlessly. Ask yourself, what do they do better than others? What seems to come naturally? What do they do without even being asked?
Those are great prompts. What next, after you spot something?
You label it. Give that natural talent a name. Like, you have a real genius for simplifying complex ideas. This helps a person recognize and own that strength. The book had that example of Alyssa recognizing Courtney's knack for handling messy situations.
And calling it her genius for navigating complexity.
Right.
Which led to a great role for Courtney.
Exactly. So spot it, label it, and then liberate it. Create opportunities for them to use that genius, even if it's outside their formal job description.
Make space for their strengths.
And also, crucially, talent magnets aren't afraid to get rid of prima donnas, those high-ego people who might be talented but disrupt the team. K.R. Sridhar at Bloom Energy had that strict no prima donnas rule.
That takes courage, but sounds important for the team dynamic. Okay, discipline number 2, the Liberator. How is this different from being a tyrant?
Well, tyrants, they create stress, fear. And that actually diminishes cognitive function. People literally can't think as well. Liberators do the opposite. They create a climate of safety and intensity.
Safety and intensity. How do those go together?
It means it's safe to speak up, to make mistakes, to try things. But there's also high expectation. They create conditions where people feel comfortable stepping up and doing their absolute best work. There's space, but also stability and momentum.
Okay, so what are the actions? How do you become a liberator?
First, you demand best work. Liberators believe people are capable, so they set high standards, but, and this is key, they make it clear that it's okay to start with rough ideas, that mistakes are part of learning. Remember Mr. Kelly, the teacher. Pushed students hard, but made it okay to be wrong initially.
Right. High expectations plus psychological safety.
Yeah.
What else?
They create space. This often means consciously talking less and listening more, shifting that ratio. Ray, the leader in the book, deliberately held back in meetings so his team would speak first.
That's a tough one for a lot of leaders, I imagine. Myself included sometime.
It takes real discipline. Liberators also generate rapid learning. They set up safe zones for experimentation, these playgrounds.
Playgrounds.
Yeah, defined areas where it's explicitly okay to try new things, take risks, and learn quickly without massive consequences if something doesn't work out. Casey Lehner empowering her design team is a good example.
I like that idea. Safe spaces to fail forward. And accountability.
They instill accountability, but it comes from a place of trust. They assume people are good hires and don't need micromanaging. Think of Mark Dankberg at Viasat encouraging junior engineers to challenge senior ones.
Wow.
Yeah, and they separate the experiment from the outcome. It's okay if an experiment fails, as long as you learn. K.R. Sridhar again. Give permission to make mistakes, but also the obligation to learn from them. Lutz Ziob at Microsoft was known for admitting his own mistakes, which sets the tone.
Trust, learn from mistakes. What about this leadership restraint?
This is about actively limiting your own voice and influence sometimes. The poker chip idea is great for meetings. Give yourself, say, 3 chips, and once you've spoken 3 times, you're done.
Huh, I like that. Practical.
Or distinguishing between soft opinions, which invite discussion, and hard opinions, which signal a decision is closer. And talking up your own mistakes makes it safer for others.
It's interesting Wiseman notes that the path of least resistance can actually be tyranny.
Exactly, because it takes conscious effort not to just take over or shut down discussion. Liberators work hard to balance that freedom to think with the obligation to contribute your best, creating an environment that's intense with challenge, not tense with fear.
Okay, discipline 3. The challenger. Not a know-it-all, but a challenger. What's the difference?
The know-it-all tells people the answers, gives directives. The challenger pushes people beyond what they currently know by seeding possibilities, posing tough questions, and building belief.
And the book had that example of Richard Palmer, the know-it-all.
Yeah, he sounded very smart, but by always having the answer, he created idle cycles. His team wasn't engaged in discovery, they were just waiting for his solution.
So challengers do it differently. How do they seed the opportunity?
They don't just hand over the goal, they provoke thinking. They help people see the opportunity or the need for themselves. Like Irene Fisher, showing students the realities of poverty that created a much deeper drive to find solutions than just telling them about it.
Makes the why much more compelling. And then they lay down a challenge.
Yes, they create a gap, a stretch, something that makes people go, how are we going to do that? It intrigues and engages them. Think of Sean pushing Taji to imagine a different future and go to college. It's about asking hard questions, defying the summit, and then stepping back.
Creating that productive tension again. And the final part is generating belief.
Crucial, because challenges can feel daunting. Challengers help build confidence, often by orchestrating small, early wins. Wangari Maathai starting the tree planting movement small, proving it could work, then scaling up. That builds momentum and belief for the bigger journey. Even a parent using questions to guide a kid through a task builds that self-belief.
Start small, build confidence. Makes sense. Okay, 4th discipline, the debate maker. This sounds important for decision making.
Absolutely. Debate makers understand that real breakthroughs often come from constructive conflict, from challenging ideas. They bring diverse perspectives together, not to just agree, but to really wrestle with issues and unearth the best solutions. Unlike decision takers who might just consult a few people or rely on their own gut.
There was that anecdote about a junior person having the key insight after a long debate.
Exactly. That wouldn't happen if the debate wasn't genuinely open. It contrasts with Jonathan's task force.
Right, what was wrong there?
He brought smart people together, but then he basically dominated. Used the group to validate his own thinking rather than leveraging their collective intelligence. It wasn't a real debate.
So how does a debate maker make it work?
It starts well before the meeting. You have to frame the issue clearly. What decision are we making? Why does it matter? Who needs to be involved? And give them time to prepare with data. Lutz Ziob framing that Microsoft debate is a prime example. Preparation is key.
Okay, frame it well. Then you have the debate itself. How do you spark the debate productively?
You have to create safety. Make it okay to disagree, even vigorously. Ask sharp, probing questions. Insist on facts and data, not just opinions. Sue Siegel, navigating that tough Affymetrix recall decision, showed real skill here. Sometimes even having people argue the opposite side can uncover risks.
Forcing different perspectives,
Mhm.
like that. And then how do you land the plane? Drive a sound decision.
You need clarity on how the decision will be made. Is the leader deciding after hearing input? Is the group deciding? Reiterate that. Then make the call or delegate it explicitly, and crucially, communicate the decision and the rationale. The leader ensures everyone's voice was considered even if their view didn't prevail. Think of Jay at the whiteboard letting his team lead, or Larry Gelb getting the rugby captains to own the decision.
Clarity and communication, got it. Last discipline, the investor. How are they different from, say, a micromanager?
Worlds apart. Micromanagers hold on to control, they hover, they create dependency. Investors do the opposite. They give ownership, they provide resources and coaching, and they hold people accountable for results, fostering independence. Elaban Pot at Siwa, Empowering New Leaders, is a great illustration.
Empowering independence. So what are the key actions?
First, they define ownership clearly. They put someone genuinely in charge. Wiseman uses that great phrase, give them 51% of the vote.
51%. So they really have the deciding voice.
Exactly. It builds confidence and certainty. They own it.
Okay. And then they invest resources. How does that work without taking over?
That's the trick. They provide support, coaching, guidance, but they don't grab the pen back. The slanted desk analogy. They're available, leaning in, but not doing the work for the person. K.R. Sridhar's Socratic Questions, John at McKinsey giving the pen back, Michael Clark's You're Smart, You Figure It Out, all examples of investing without interfering.
Guiding, not doing. That's a fine line. And accountability. How do investors hold people accountable?
They're clear up front about the expected results, the return on the investment of ownership. They provide safety nets, maybe peer support, but they don't jump in and rescue someone the minute they stumble. They follow up, check progress, but let the person figure things out. Sally and Marcus in the book showed this. It comes back to that core multiplier belief. People are smart, they'll figure it out if you give them the space and support.
Okay, those are the 5 disciplines. Really powerful stuff. But let's circle back to the accidental diminisher. Why is it so vital to understand this concept?
It's just so common. So much diminishing behavior isn't malicious. It comes from people trying to be helpful or fast or protective, but they don't realize the negative impact they're having. This is often where the biggest gains can be made, becoming aware of our own accidental tendencies.
Can you remind us of a few common types, the ones people might recognize in themselves or others?
Sure, there's the rapid responder, thinks they're being helpful and agile by jumping in with answers.
But actually stifles others' thinking and becomes a bottleneck.
Exactly. Or the optimist, tries to motivate, keep spirits up, which is good, but can sometimes minimize real challenges with a how hard can it be vibe. Liz Wiseman herself admitted to doing this. Imagine your team is really struggling and you just brush it off. That can feel really invalidating.
Yeah, I can see that. Dismissing real concerns.
And then the protector tries to shield the team from politics or bad news, but ends up isolating them, limiting their learning and growth, and maybe disconnecting them from reality.
So our good intentions can backfire. What's the antidote? How do we stop being accidental diminishers?
Self-awareness is number one, really reflecting on your impact. Seeking feedback can be huge, like in that Abu Dhabi workshop story where people ask colleagues to point out their diminishing habits.
That takes vulnerability.
It does. And then developing simple workarounds, like John recognizing he was a pace setter, optimist, and rescuer, and creating that 3-in-1 code with his team. 3 things he'd stop doing, 1 thing he'd start. Concrete action.
Okay, but what if you're on the receiving end, working for a diminisher? The book calls this multiplying up. What can you actually do?
Yeah, it's a tough spot, but not hopeless. First, try not to let it drain you. Don't get sucked in. Protect your own energy. Focus on your work.
Easier said than done sometimes, but important.
Definitely. Also, find the white space. Look for areas where you do have autonomy, where you can make decisions and contribute without interference.
Focus on what you can control. What about interacting with the diminisher?
You can try to subtly lead your leader, help them understand how to best use your skills, advocate for yourself, and don't be afraid to ask for what you need, clarity, feedback, learning opportunities, but frame it carefully, linking it to shared goals.
Strategic communication. What else?
Maybe talk up your mistakes, model a learning mindset even if they don't. Proactively sign up for a stretch assignment to keep yourself growing, and maybe even invite them to the party. Show them the positive energy and results your team is generating. Sometimes seeing it firsthand can shift their perspective slightly.
Interesting. Bring them closer instead of pushing them away.
Yeah, the goal is to become sort of invincible, maintaining your own high performance and engagement despite the diminishing environment.
Taking control of your own experience.
Okay.
So let's bring it all together. How does someone actually become a multiplier? What's the process?
Wiseman outlines three key things: insight, resolve, and operational change.
Insight, resolve, operational change.
Okay. First, you need the insight awareness of your own tendencies, especially the accidental diminishing ones. Then, the resolve, a genuine commitment to changing. But that's not enough. You need operational change specific, concrete actions and behaviors you're going to practice.
And she suggests that extreme development plan, right? Not trying to fix everything.
Exactly. Focus your energy. Pick one significant weakness and work to neutralize it, just get it to an acceptable level. And pick one existing strength and really double down on it. Make it truly outstanding.
Focus your efforts, like those 30-day challenges the book mentions.
Yeah, people trying specific things. Consciously labeling talent for 30 days. Or using the poker chips in meetings. Or deliberately creating space for someone they tend to overshadow. Small experiments, practice consistently.
What's a really powerful way to kickstart that change?
Wiseman suggests asking a trusted colleague, someone who sees you in action, to pick an experiment for you based on what they observe as your main accidental diminisher tendency.
Ooh, that adds accountability and external perspective.
Big time. And you see examples like Mike Felix at AT&T where they rolled out these ideas more broadly, aiming for a real shift in the company culture.
Which brings us to building a multiplier culture. How does that happen across a whole organization?
It takes sustained effort. Creating a shared language, talking about multipliers, diminishers, accidental diminishers, having open conversations, training people on the mindsets and disciplines, leaders actively modeling the behaviors, and really embedding these principles into daily processes, hiring, performance reviews, project kickoffs. Bamboo HR and Intuit are mentioned as examples.
So it becomes part of the organizational DNA.
Ideally, yes.
Okay, this has been a fantastic deep dive. If you had to boil it down, what are the absolute key takeaways for someone listening right now?
I think the biggest one is realizing the immense potential you have to amplify the smarts and capabilities of the people around you. You don't have to be a CEO. Anyone can be a multiplier in their interactions. And often it's small shifts in behavior that make a huge difference.
Like how you ask questions.
Exactly. Or how much space you leave for others to think and speak. Are you asking questions to genuinely learn or just to guide them to your answer? Are you giving ownership or just tasks? Even small tweaks can unlock so much more potential.
And that leads perfectly to our final thought for today. Just think about one interaction you expect to have later today. Could you consciously choose one small multiplier action?
Maybe it's holding back your opinion for an extra minute. Maybe it's asking one more clarifying question. Maybe it's specifically acknowledging someone's unique contribution.
Just one small experiment. What difference might it make? Give it a try.
And if foes are curious about their own tendencies, that accidental diminisher quiz is on the book's website, multipliersbooks.com. And for deeper dives, like 360 assessments, the Wiseman Group's website has more info. That's thewisemangroup.com.
Excellent resources. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into multipliers. Lots to think about and put into practice.